Jackanoid Paralope is a mission-driven media company. Check out more of our podcasts at jackanoidparalope.com.
Jackanoid Paralope!
Nathaniel.
Michael.
Oh, no, it's the other way around. Fuck
Yeah,
me.
exactly.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. We've been going all the way around. Okay, go ahead.
From Jackanoid Paralope, this is the Beta Boy Breakdown with Michael and Nathaniel. So, you and me, Michael, we've known each other for a long time. And not too distant in our recent reconnection, I kind of came to you during a late night deep talk and said, a year from now, we're working on a creative project. What is it? And that kind of set us on several months of, just like deep talks and brainstorming and all that stuff. And we landed on an idea that is now going to be this podcast here, which is the Beta Boy Breakdown. And
do you want to tell them what the idea was to start?
Exactly. We're going to go through all that. Okay. But I think that it's important to kind of like at least lay the groundwork, because who the heck are we? What is this project? Why is it important right now? I think it's important to just like give a baseline as to like why this is important to us and who the heck we are.
Well, we went to college together and we studied acting at NYU.
It's a great degree.
Yeah. Here to tell you, make your kids do it. And then, of course, as an actor, I went into work for a corporate coffee company. I'll just put it that way. It's a worldwide brand. There's like only two, so you can guess which one. And I had a 15-year career general managing for them as a store manager. I opened up, 10 plus stores. And I, at the end of 2021, burnt out from, like I said, 15 years hustle and go. COVID came. That was a horrible time in the service industry. And so I just said, screw it. I can be happier making less money. And for the last 4 years, I have made very little money and been so much happier. Part of that is the area of the country I live in. I live in East Tennessee, so living here is relatively cheap compared to the rest of the country, so I can do that. But also, I've been having a lot of time reconnecting to the artist side that I kind of shoved in a corner for 15 years to have a corporate management side. And so, when we talked, I was eager to get back and do some type of artistic project. And we went through several iterations. And at some level, we're not even sure if this is the final iteration of what we want to do.
Yeah, it's a discovery.
But it's where we finally started to say, okay, process has got to meet product a little bit. So that brings us to this. Did that even answer your question?
Yeah, it did. And I think a big thing in there is like the difference in our locations. Like you're in East Tennessee, you're able to kind of like navigate your passions a little bit different without the financial component. I'm in New York, I'm in Brooklyn, and cost of living is so high here. I was recently abroad and I told somebody that an onion costs $3 now. And it's not even...
Holy shit.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And so it's not even like about being immersed in incredible culture, incredible restaurants, incredible options for enjoying the city in which I live. It's impossible to do that. It's also impossible to like cook anything beyond like things that are scalable, basically, like things that last a few meals. And I don't think that this is that different from what a lot of people are facing in this country. I just happen to be in like a major city. So
it's funny. You make so much more money than me, but we have pretty much the same standard of living.
Same standard of living. Like exactly. It's ridiculous. And I'm sure you have better onions because recently they have not been that good in my supermarkets. But so we went to school for acting, and at this point we're in our 40s.
Barely 40s. Yeah, get that
barely
right.
Barely 40s. And I am recently reconnecting to a lot of my artistic side too. I never stopped being a creative, but as we'll kind of go through, a bit of life happened for us both and drew us down paths that were certainly not altogether out of step with who we are as people, but definitely put emphasis on other components of life versus what we're doing now. And over the last year, as I've come out of different life changes, I've reconnected to the acting side. I host podcasts for corporate. I play music. I write books and all these things. And it's all kind of swirling around the intersection for me around creativity and community. A lot of what I focus on now is really looking outward as opposed to inward and finding those things in this country and society that like really kind of just like not only grab my interest, but make me want to discover what a fix might be, how to bring people together. And for me, there's a big component to whatever product we end up creating, whether it's this, whether it's the next iteration, that just seeks to find a commonality of language, a commonality of experience to reconnect to the things that unite us as opposed to drive us apart. So that's kind of like where I'm at.
Yeah, yeah, I'm there as well. We feel like I'm very political. I follow a lot of politics. I'm the person in my friend group where everybody comes to me for what's happening latest in politics because that's one of my rabbit holes that I get obsessed about. I'm at the point where I'm like, as a red state Democrat, like we're the ones on the front lines of this shit, of this culture war. Yeah. Because we are facing so many more conservatives on a daily basis than anyone up in New York City is. And it's a different flavor of conservative. Here in East Tennessee, it's evangelical conservatism. And it's so hard to communicate with people who have those beliefs for someone such as myself, who has such different beliefs. And that lack of being able to communicate and noticing like, oh, our stories are the same in a lot of ways. Like I identify with these people in a lot of ways and what they're going through and their thoughts and their feelings about things. But when it comes to some of their beliefs culturally and some of their beliefs politically, it feels like all those communication barriers break down and like everybody gets really defensive. And so I was like, if there's just some way that we can learn to communicate with people that are different than us, that we feel like we've lost in the past 10 years since the rise of social media or whatever you want to blame it on. And I think the first step to that, to being able to communicate with somebody that you feel so far away from, is to understand them and understand what they believe and why they believe it and who they are, so that you can better connect with them when you're talking to them. And that's something that I think a lot of red state Democrats really could use and would really, really like. Because, I mean, there's sometimes we get down here in East Tennessee, we look at y'all in California and in New York, and you guys are just like off in your towers and you're protected and you're safe because your state legislatures are the right side or on the correct side of a lot of moral issues while they're not down here. And so y'all just kind of feel siloed a little bit, and we kind of feel like hung out to dry, or at least I do. I should speak for me. And so having red state Democrats talk about that and how to communicate with people is something that's very valuable that I don't think is out there in the podcast sphere, especially the left-wing podcast sphere.
There's certainly an intersection of politics that will come into this podcast, but I think to draw it back to like the core of what we want to talk about in this, it's about masculinity. And it's about us charting kind of like the role of masculinity, not only in our lives personally, but also in this country right now, in the different factions and the different sides of this political divide that we're in, and try to just reconnect what is not only the perception of masculinity, but what is the role of man today? What is a healthy? What is a opposite of toxic? To draw through all these disconnection points and actually find the connection points that bind us, I think we need to like really just strip away a lot of the assumptions and also untangle for ourselves our own complex relationship with these issues, and just try to like come at it from an empathetic point of view. I've been saying like in a couple conversations, if I were to start a third political party, it would be the party of empathy, because I think that there's a lack of it. There's what's the word I'm looking for? There's a deficit of empathy right now, and it's leading to just zero-sum conversations where nobody can actually talk to each other. And this is like not a new thought. This has been happening for a long, long time. But I think in order to address the big stuff, we have to boil it back down and just really try to get some clarity and rebuild. And that starts with trying to understand the experience of others.
Yeah, you're 100% right when you say this podcast is not going to focus on politics, because we really are trying to figure out how to communicate with people especially men with men's issues and around that. I don't think that you can disconnect politics completely from that, because the red-pilled manosphere is what we're going to be talking about for most of these podcasts. You can't take that out of politics. That is a lot of conservative politics nowadays. So that it's obviously going to intersect at that point. And I feel like trying to study the red-pilled manosphere and men's issues and, quote unquote toxic masculinity and what a positive, like non-toxic masculine experience is us trying to understand these people who are more conservative than us so that we can talk to them and meet them where they're at. And I think the word empathy is spot on. That to me is the first step with all of this, because you can't empathize with someone. This isn't me. This is Brene Brown. I listened to something she was talking about, and she said this, that you can't empathize with someone unless you believe their experience first. And I think in today's day and age, when a conservative tells us what they believe and why they believe it, our first instinct is to go, no, that's not what you're experiencing. That's not what you're believing. You're being cynical. You're not coming to arguments in good faith when you say these are what you believe and why you believe them. This podcast, I think, is going to take that and say, we're going to believe in good faith what these people are telling us they believe, and we're going to explore the different areas of their beliefs and try to understand them. And where I think they're cynical, I'm going to call them out and I'm going to say, I think this is being cynical right here. Or where their logic isn't right, like we're going to have a discussion about why that logic isn't right. But it's not a dunk fest on conservatives. We really are going to approach each of the topics we do trying to believe that they are coming to these things in good faith, unless proven otherwise. And I put that caveat in the end of it because we've recorded a couple episodes now, and there's a point in one of the episodes where I was basically like, okay, no, these guys they're not operating in good faith, and just kind of cast all of that out on them, and that's fine. If someone's not, we'll call it out. But starting from a place of we believe them, and here are the very real things that are causing them to believe what they believe, so that we can understand them, so that we can communicate better with them.
Like, to take it all the way back, I wanted to first ask you, from a baseline level, like when you were growing up, who were your role models for what a real man looked like, for what a positive, or not even a positive, but like what a real man looked like?
Dude, I had such a hard time because you put this in the outline and I was looking at it. And so I was thinking about it, and I had like such a hard time trying to figure out like who the positive role models were. And then I even went through a little bit of a guilt because I was like, I didn't instantly say my father. So I was like, what does that mean? Ooh, I'm getting some therapy here. But when I thought about it some more, for some reason, the Ultimate Warrior came to mind.
Well, you wrote that, and I did think professional wrestling kind of played in. It was weird.
Yeah. No, it was. Yeah, I remember being obsessed with the Ultimate Warrior. I thought he was so cool. I liked the paint. I liked I liked his costume. I liked all that stuff. And I thought like he was real. Like I don't know if you've ever watched The Ultimate Warrior, or anybody goes back and watches some of those promos. Like,
that's our first plug.
Crazy.
Go watch some of the videos of Ultimate Warrior videos, because it's experimental theater is what it is.
It's insanity. It's absolutely insanity. But to a child, Michael, it read as like ultimate passion and conviction, and he really believed what he was saying, and I was like, that's so cool. So I said the Ultimate Warrior because I think that was there. And then the other role model, I was a little bit later. Like, I put my 11th grade history teacher, Dr. Woodward. I never had a teacher like him. He was like the cool kind of ex-hippie teacher, and he was very funny. He was the first history teacher I ever had that wasn't just like memorize facts and dates. He was very, very, he told American history as like a story, which like as an actor, as a storyteller, like that really appealed to me. At the time, I wanted to be the funniest person in the world, so I would just always try to be funnier than him, which would distract class all the time. So he hated me, but I really looked up to him. And my upbringing, because I was raised in East Tennessee, is very conservative, like socially. I was raised very conservative. All the schools I attended, private schools, they were all religious based, some evangelical based, some not. And it was all men too. I went to an all boys school. So like my growing up in my school years was very cis white hetero, like painstakingly so. I somehow remained liberal through all of that. It was largely because of my parents. They were very, very liberal. So I never went down the conservative Republican side with that. I was like the cis white male who was like, oh yeah, and gay people should be able to be married too, you know? So that's probably why I can't think of too many male role models, because all the other male role models in my life here in East Tennessee were that conservative thing that I just never agreed with or identified with.
The first show I ever wrote, I cast you in this role where the first time the audience sees you, I was talking about this the other day, I gave you the to be or not to be speech and just told you to go wild with it because I knew what you would do with it. It was like this over the top absurdist bent, but also grounded in the reality of this like character preparing for an audition. And I can see the Ultimate Warrior in that performance.
I was going to say, that's an Ultimate Warrior propo right there.
Yeah. That I could totally see the connection now that you said it. You mentioned at the father angle, I was thinking about this question too, and I likewise had a little bit of difficulty with it because I didn't grow up with my father. I grew up in a family full of women. And that really did put a question mark as to what am I supposed to grow into? Like certain aspects of like a young man growing into himself were made to feel very shameful or wrong somehow. And that really confused me for a long time, maybe up until like the past year, you know? And so my role models have come to me at different times in life. But if I were to look back as a childhood like figure, I would be really hard pressed to look beyond maybe a teacher, like for instance, a theater teacher I also had who I wanted to impress because he felt like a father figure. And I wanted to impress my father too, who I saw every now and then. But that was more of like wanting to impress and feel accepted and feel like all that stuff rather than I want to be like them.
Well, you bring up a good point because it is easy to confuse the need to feel accepted by somebody, like seeking someone's approval, with that person being a role model. And I think they're two different things. And I think you're right to call out the difference there that you're realizing, where it's like seeking approval from somebody and wanting them to tell you a good job or whatever is some kind of daddy issue coming up. Mm-hmm. like it comes up for me too, especially when I was younger in life. I think you grow out of it a little bit, but yeah, there's a difference between that and like seeing yourself in someone else. But I think they are easily confusable too.
Has your idea of a role model evolved? I mean, like, have you found people in your life as you gotten older that you would actually pinpoint, be like, all right, this actually helped me guide along, or have there been people that you look to in that way as you've gotten older?
Yes. And they're all women. So I can't point to any male role models in my adult life that I have gone, I want to be like that person.
To be a quote unquote real man or a positive thing, it really comes down to also just being a good human, and human qualities like are not gender specific. So there's certainly role models across both. But when I was thinking about who have been my role models for who is a quote unquote real man, as I've gotten older, I actually had an easier time answering because I had some folks who are now former in-laws, and they're all pretty much from southern states, who just handle their shit and act with empathy and a lot of heart for their family. And while we differed in political beliefs, they are people who, you know, rise with the sun in some cases, work hard to, you know, give a good life to their family, and respond with humor and curiosity, are intellectual. They read, they have thoughts and opinions about things. They're willing to hear others' thoughts and opinions about things. There is no quote unquote right thing. They're constantly searching. And I think like that quality of being both an active mind and someone who just handles their shit is hugely attractive to me, and it's something that I've tried to embody in myself as I've gotten older.
Yeah, there's an openness emotionally and mentally in everybody that I've seen as a role model too. Like they've always appeared very open to different new ideas, open to different thoughts, open to different feelings, while still at the same time expressing what they believe and why they believe it. And like you're saying, handling their shit.
Responsibility, accountability.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, those are and like you said, see a lot of this, we're talking about men, right? And how men are seen, what the qualities of a man really is like, okay, what are just the qualities of a good human? Mm-hmm. And I think that's like both. So part of this like gendering aspects of positive aspects to a gender And assigning them in that way, I think is just like so dumb because like it's just we're all human beings. So we all have the same good and the same negative qualities. I don't know why it has to be gendered in this way.
I think it's useful to maybe give a disclaimer also, just because I'm in Brooklyn and some of my people that I care deeply about do identify as non-binary. We're not including a lot about the gender spectrum here, and even to mention that it exists maybe turns off some listeners, but it is a
Yeah, you
real
just
thing.
lost so many red states.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, like, also it's important to at least say that we're focusing on men's issues and masculinity and femininity. And just for the sake of a very big topic, trying to break it down and start to talk doesn't mean that we eliminate all things. Like we'll do our best as two flawed individuals to hunt and like remain open as we're talking about, and we don't presume to have all the answers. So if we get vilified for not having all the answers, it's okay. That's what we accept.
Yeah, we're definitely going to take a cis hetero slant on this because that's who we are. And yeah, I don't want to be seen as not being able to acknowledge that there are other everywhere in between because that's true. But we are going to podcast about what we know about, and which is the cis hetero male experience. So
Yeah.
it'll have that slant on it. We love you if you're non-binary. Come on in. We love you if you're anywhere in between. But yeah, the issues we're going to focus on are that of the straight white male.
So as a man in your early 40s, or what would you say, the barely 40s?
The barely 40s.
The barely 40s. How would you define masculinity for yourself today?
Mm. Um, well, I kind of said before that like I don't think there are very many behaviors that are strictly masculine or strictly feminine. So to say like, what does it mean to be masculine? I'm like, what does it mean to be human? I that's kind of where I am with it, and I'm rather confused that that some people think it's more complicated than that. I'm thinking of like the area of the country I'm in with conservatives. They very, very much believe that there are certain behaviors and certain things that are assigned to one gender and certain qualities and beliefs that are assigned to the other gender. And that confuses me more now in my life than it ever has, as to why those things are true. And so when you say, what is masculinity? I'm like, I I don't know because I'm trying to find something that's like what's masculine that can't also be feminine, that can't also be non-binary. Like, show me something that has to be one gender or another, like some aspect of humanity or some quality a person has, and then I can tell you what masculinity is or isn't. But until then, I think it's just all the same. We're all human.
It's an interesting question to explore because part of me is right on lockstep with you, where the easy answer is, I don't know. And there's things that I've attempted to think through that I'll try to articulate here in terms of what in myself I would say are masculine qualities that I am only just starting to understand have been kind of like not given, well, yeah, given a little bit of short shrift by me in hopes of getting along.
Example.
An example would be I'm trying to phrase it in a way that's a little bit PC, I would say.
Just say it how you want to say it because we can always cut in a podcast.
Yeah, well, that's true. Being a driving force in a relationship, taking the lead as opposed to waiting to build consensus.
That's something that that you feel like you have right now, or you're trying to learn?
Well, both. I think I have it and I'm trying to learn it more. But I think that I'll give an example of one experience that really drives this home for me. So my ex and I were renovating a house, and she had a very clear vision for it in terms of the design, the aesthetic, all these things. And we also had a kind of we had a dynamic where I was there to further her vision. And we also were at a certain point in our relationship where if something was misaligned, we couldn't really talk about it. And the sadness from her side would just gut me. So I would do everything in my power to go just above and beyond to keep her happy. And that meant silencing a lot of not only what I might want that was different in service of her vision, but also really just deferring on every single decision. And the experience led to this, one kind of like micro moment that kind of articulates the whole, which is I was at the house when she wasn't, which was not unusual. I was up there doing a lot of work with contractors and other stuff. And there was a simple question that came up with, oh, the positioning of this, like, it might have to be this way instead of that. And I could not give them a straight answer. I was like, let me get my wife on the phone. And she was in a meeting or something and couldn't answer right away. So they were in a hold pattern, just waiting to do this simple thing until I could track down an answer for what needed to happen in her estimation for her to be happy. And I could not take accountability or ownership over making a choice. I could not make a decision. And that is something I've really strove to exorcise from myself over the last year, that holding and wait pattern, and just like we're talking about role models, own my shit and just make a fucking decision and take accountability for whatever the next thing is. Because in the end, it was a simple thing. And I could have used my better judgment and said, you know what? I think there's a way to do it the way that she saw. Let me try to work this out with you guys. Or, yeah, you're right. I think that might work better. Let me communicate it back. But I was so concerned with the relationship dynamic that I silenced my own ability to just kind of take charge of a situation. And I think that a lot of the conflicting signals that we've explored in the 2 episodes that we've recorded already that influence certain men's behavior are these conflicting signals of don't be hurtful, but also don't be weak. And to walk this tightrope is actually quite baffling at times and kind of confuses what just being a person with inner strength and opinions and stuff is capable of doing. And it can lead to people either having a deficit of opinion or a deficit of empathy.
But here's where my comeback is that doesn't sound like a masculine or a feminine behavior. Your relationship was at a point that you didn't feel comfortable making a decision because of a complicated web of thoughts and feelings and emotions and arguments and all this kind of stuff would come up that you might have to deal with, that either you didn't want to deal with and she didn't want to deal with, and yada, 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 yada. That is not masculine or feminine. The answer isn't to step up and be a real man. The answer...
Well, I think it could have been. I think it's part of it. You're exactly right. And I do feel a sense of myself where just growing a pair and taking ownership over things isn't the worst thing.
No, of course it's not the worst thing. But my question to what you were going to say is, why was your relationship at a point where you thought you couldn't make a decision? And the answer to that is so complicated and has more to deal with the specific toxicity that you guys were going through at the time rather than being a man or a woman.
I see what you're saying. I'm just saying everything kind of exists all together and nothing is all or nothing, really.
I hear you. Yeah, I totally hear you. Yeah, I do. I hear you. This is why I say it's so complicated because it's like once you get into these deeply personal issues and so relationship specific stuff or any kind of conversation specific, like there's so many things at play to which masculinity and femininity are one part of it. But for some reason, I just feel like in the country today, when it comes to, masculine issues and feminine issues, we want to try to make things simple. And I think the right does a really good job of this, of just making it so simple. Like the men are the leaders and the women are the followers. And that's the role. And if you're doing anything outside of that, you're bad. And I'm like, this is so much more complicated than anybody wants to really admit or talk about, because the simplicity feels right. And I don't know why it feels, Yeah,
It's
it's easy to
actionable.
digest. And when I say this, I say it feels right to me too in a lot of cases. And then my like higher order brain has got to come in and be like, ooh, why does that feel that way? And question and start talking to myself about it. Because I think like we've all been societally programmed or whatever you want to say. We've all grown up in America. Like we've all been trained societally the same way to have those same thoughts and feelings of comfort when things are explained to us in a way that makes sense to how we've been programmed. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Yeah. So it feels good and right, but is it? you know, and that's what I think we're going to talk about here too. But
So you're kind of dipping into that question of what's good and what's toxic. And that's something that, we've kind of circled around in a bunch of conversations over the last months is like, how do you even define what positive masculinity is? How would you define toxic masculinity?
the simple answer is something like, if the boomers are doing it, then it's toxic. Um, that's the simple answer. But it's also like the thing I learned in the past 10 years about masculinity is that I'm going to be societally programmed to react certain ways to certain things in a relationship because of the instance of being a man. And what I need to do is not try to unlearn those behaviors or those thoughts. Like I'm going to come into every relationship being I'm the leader and she's the follower. That's just how I'm going to approach every relationship because that's how I've been programmed. But when those thoughts and feelings come up that way, I need to be able to engage with them and talk to my partner more and figure out what the best decision for us specifically is and not the best decision for me. Does that make sense?
I think you need both for sure. Like you need to honor your what's right for you as well as what's right for each other.
Well, it's all about communication is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
It's, it rather than one person making a decision and one person following
Right.
a decision, it is more like, okay, here's what I think. What do you think? What's the overlap? Where do we disagree? Let's talk about that. And it's just a lot of talking and a lot of communication is what I've learned. And a lot of people don't want to do that work because they're lazy. So they fall back on the old stereotype of, hey, we're going to be doing this.
Yeah. So once again, it's less about masculinity, it's more about humanity. It's kind of like
Yeah.
working. Yeah.
It's
not
it's about
exclusive.
it's about communicating with a partner and knowing what's happening and talking about issues as they come up rather than falling into those stereotypes, gender roles, just because they're easy to perform in the moment.
And so maybe tying this like less to interpersonal relationships for the moment and looking at some of the issues that we're talking about in this podcast. We're talking about the manosphere. So from a society perspective, how would you say toxic? So like if it's not only about falling into these pre-programmed mindsets, but actually how is it kind of crystallized at a larger scope thing?
You mean like it's systemic at that point? Because
Yeah,
there's
I think so.
toxic masculinity is systemic for sure in terms of the pay gap with women and well, now Roe v. Wade being overturned for a couple years. There are definitely this type of toxic masculinity where it's whatever the men want and the women have to follow is now ingrained systemically in our government and in our lives and in the culture. And so, yeah, no individual can rid the United States of toxic masculinity or systemic toxic masculinity. And at that point, you kind of feel helpless about it. And so, again, that's why we're doing this podcast, so you could talk about it.
Since we've been doing this work, has your thinking changed at all around these issues?
Things have gotten more complicated, specifically when researching these episodes. I'll definitely start or approach a topic from admittedly what's like a cynical point of view that I have to like fight against. Like I'm researching trad wives right now, and like where I started or where I thought I was going to go with this when I started researching is not where I'm finding myself. And So I'm getting a lot more empathy for certain groups in the red-pilled manosphere because I'm starting to understand them better. It's not necessarily changing my overall opinion about what they're doing or if they're harmful or not, but it is complicating it to a degree that I didn't realize. And I think that's pretty cool, actually. I like that.
And that seems to be like kind of trajectory for you in these, is that you kind of go down this rabbit hole and you end up in a place that you didn't expect. I'll get these texts from you where it's like, dude, this could spiral outward in any number of ways. Like, like let me bounce some ideas off of you in terms of like what the trajectory of this, journey is going to be, this narrative is going to be.
Yeah, there are a lot of connection points with topics that we talk about. I mean, there's just a lot of exits off the highway is a metaphor I sometimes use with you, where it's like, hey, this relates to this area of the culture, it relates to this area of the culture, and we gotta choose at some point. We have to edit down for an episode, like which path we want to follow. But there are so many, for every path that we do follow, there are like 10 that are equally as interesting. But I'm trying to keep it focused on men, manosphere, performance of the male gender, those types of topics.
How did we land on this project from your perspective?
We spent a couple months talking and refining like what we wanted to do. I kept saying, I'm fascinated in this manosphere because for a lot of the reasons that I've already discussed, where like I grew up in a culture that was very much, that should have funneled me directly into the manosphere, but I'm not. And so questions and curiosities around like, okay, there are people and experiences that they have and the way they grow up and the way they think set them on a trajectory for one way. And then there are some people that have the same experiences, fewer of them, and like shoot off a different way. And so why did I shoot off the different way into what I think is a more progressive and understanding and open-minded way, and everybody else went a different way? Like, what was different about our experiences? What did I consume media-wise differently than them? Or what was different about the way I grew up? All those kinds of things. And so that led me down a thing where it's like, well, I got to understand why they believe what they believe and what they believe. And as we talked, I was just like, this manosphere thing is a huge world that I don't see a lot of podcasts, especially like left-wing progressive podcasts, analyzing. I don't see anybody talking about what goes on in this space, especially from a straight white male perspective. Occasionally there'll be a podcast, usually hosted by women, that will dissect this from a feminist perspective, but they're missing the male perspective on it. Also, in like my ultimate goal, which is to destroy MAGA, like that's my ultimate goal. And in order to do that, like, you've got to change their mind on what they believe, especially when it comes to like men's rights and men's ideas. And change has got to come from men. Like, women can't change men's ideas on this, especially if the man they're talking to thinks that they are, I'll just use the word better, as a catch-all. If they think that they're better or they think their ideas are more right because they're a man, they're never going to listen to a woman. So it's like, hey, we've got to kind of look at our cis white male privilege here and use it for good to kind of dismantle some of these ideas. And the first step of that is mapping this manosphere and what it is and themes that are in it and the belief system that they have so that we can learn how to communicate it when we talk to these people. And that's just something I think a red state progressive is in need of. Not saying that blue state progressives can't get value out of it, but a red state progressive, like, nah, man, like, we got to know how to talk to these people and convince them to come join our side because we got more of them than y'all do. And like I said, all the progressive podcasts I know, like, are based in California or New York or Washington or Oregon or any of those type of blue places. So I think we're uniquely positioned as somebody, one of the hosts is from a red state and you spend a lot of time in red states. So it's like, we kind of understand them a little bit better.
Also, I love just like the lofty fucking goal. That's right up my alley.
Why the fuck not?
Fix society.
What I mean?
Fix
Yeah,
society.
I mean, yeah, I've succeeded at goals that I didn't even like. Like, I had goals in life to professional goals, and I was like, I guess I'll just succeed at this now. And I'm like, let's just fail at something we want to do rather than succeed at something we didn't.
You're really looking at this as a progressive audience. Like our audience is progressive and we are giving a playbook for how to talk to the other side.
I don't want to be prescriptive and tell people how to talk to the other side or whatnot. I think this podcast is about mapping the manosphere, where it came from, the different ideas that are in it, to understand the themes of it. And then outside of this podcast, that might affect change of that. But like, that's not going to be a focus of anything that I do in this podcast. It's not like telling people how to combat this. This is going to be this is a time to study and observe what they believe and why they believe it, and take that information into the world. Hopefully somebody takes that information into the world and tries to make change from it. But I feel like part of the problem is when we start prescribing too much like solutions to this, the podcast isn't interesting anymore. I don't know what the solution is, so I'm not gonna tell you what I think the solution is. I'm just gonna tell you, like, here you go. This is the Wikipedia for manosphere, and then y'all do what you got to do. I know what I'm gonna do.
What are you gonna do?
Oh, I want to use this information to understand them so I can defeat them 100%. But like, or just so I can better have conversations with them so that we can try to get some kind of understanding and communication between these two groups that don't see each other eye to eye. I shouldn't say defeat. That's just me being funny.
That's what I was digging into.
Yeah. That's me being funny. I should say that, in order to rid like the country of this scourge of MAGA, like, we need Republicans on our side. In 2016, let me start there. In 2016, when Donald Trump won, I think there was a mistake on the left where we just kind of assumed, well, he didn't win the popular vote, so therefore we don't need to spend any time trying to communicate with the people on the right, because all we need to do is really hold our numbers and it'll be fine because we're the majority. We can't say that anymore after 2024. We are the minority of the country on the left. We need some of these people on the right to join our side. And my overarching, like my uber objective for myself is like, well, how do we convince them? We need to know how to convince them. And this is the first step in that. So like, I limit what this podcast is. Like, it can only be so big. I don't want to deal with the second half of this thing in my mind, because I want to focus on the first half, which is just understanding them and what they believe and why they believe it and what does it all say, while also going, okay, if this is a negative aspect of what we consider the manosphere and masculinity, like, what are positive aspects of that? Also arming ourselves with like what we have a good vision of, because I think on the progressive left, what we have is a lot of being able to point to something, toxic masculinity, and say that's toxic, don't do that. And we don't have a very good idea of, oh, what you should do instead is this. A lot of men out there have spent a lot of time, especially through 2017 with Me Too and through Donald Trump, being lectured at by the left, or at least I should say they feel lectured at by the left. And well, we have to be able to show some way that they can role model positive aspects of masculinity while still frickin' being themselves, rather than lecturing them the entire time.
We're definitely taking a big bite of the cookie with this thing. So why not? What is a beta boy? Why did we choose Beta Boy Breakdown?
Okay, let me read you what I wrote, and then you can kind of respond off of it.
All right.
So your question was, what is a beta boy? And I said, a beta boy is anyone who rejects the premise of the red pills argument. A beta boy is anyone who is willing to critique the left. A beta boy is anyone who is trying to understand the red pilled right on its terms in order to communicate better.
Now, where did you get these definitions from?
My brain.
Okay, because that's such like a kind definition. I expected something very different, to be honest. Are we basically taking the
We're
term
team beta boy.
Giving?
Yeah. This is team beta boy, 100%. And I'm not going to gender it. If you're a woman out there, you could be a beta boy. That's totally awesome. Merch idea. We should get that merch going. The first thing that I wrote, I resonated with me the most, where it's like, it's a rejection of the red pilled manosphere's argument. And their argument always is some derivative of feminism is destroying a modern American culture. And sometimes feminism can also be substituted for diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? So their argument is that's what's destroying the culture. And so they've set up a war where they're fighting against that. And we're over here on the left. And it sometimes feels like we're like, there's not a war. Like, so it's like all the sides of this war, you have people who are saying, God, I'm going to fight. And the other side going, what are we fighting about? And that I'm like, I reject that argument that this is a war. I reject the argument that this is like some kind of cultural struggle. The culture war does not exist for me at all. What exists is people who say it's okay to do what you want and be who you want and love who you want. And, you know, all the inclusive things, and people who are married to one specific way of living and interpreting the world. And it's the way that they grew up and the way their parents grew up, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Nothing is wrong with anybody in the red pill manosphere for how they want to choose to live their life. What is wrong is when you moralize the other side as bad because they're not living the way that you think they should. Like, that is what is very clearly bad about this.
Do what you want, just don't be hurtful to other people.
Yeah, that's basically it. And that's not a masculine or feminine thing. That's a everyday human thing. Like, yeah, moralizing your lifestyle and separating it into hierarchy where you are at the top and your way of living and your way of viewing the world is at the top and everybody else is below you means that there can't be a conversation. I say this to people when I talk with Christians that if we talk about a social topic like abortion or something like that, and I will preface the conversation with, we can talk about this as long as you understand that at the end of the conversation, I'm not going to change my views and you're not going to change your views. And they say, yeah, that's fine. And then I say, and the other question I have is, do your views solely come from your interpretation of the Bible or any religious text, like your pastor or your church or the Bible or whatever? And they go, yeah, it all comes from that. And I go, then there's no point in having a conversation because you've put your religion in your mind, like at the top of everything you believe. And that is, if that's the only thing that's informing your belief, there is no evidence that I, a mere mortal, can come to you that you will place above the Bible or above any of your spiritual teachers. So this is not a conversation. This is an opportunity for you to preach at me. And we've already established, I'm not going to change my mind.
How often do people reject having a conversation then? How often does it not happen when you preface it like that? Because I think it's incredibly articulate way to approach it. I'm curious what the outcome is.
Never. I mean, they always want to talk at that point. I think framing it in that way is not to set up a dynamic of do this or not. Like it's not an ultimatum, what that is. I think with that, although it is structured as one, what I feel like I'm doing with that is making their expectations, like defining what their expectations should be of a conversation. You know what I mean? Like let's go into this with eyes wide open, because now we can have a conversation, hopefully, about trying to understand with one another. I want to understand why you believe what you believe. I don't want to judge you or try to change your belief. I just want to understand why you believe this. And in turn, what I ask for is for you to try to understand why I believe what I believe. If you live in East Tennessee, you know a lot of Christian people, when you talk to them about their religion or their morals or their worldview, will take it as an opportunity to minister to you and try to change your mind and get another soul for Christ. And a lot of them don't know they're doing it because they've just been, they've always seen it done this way, and this is how these conversations go. So they'll try to start doing it. And many of them, that's not what they want to do. Like they don't want to do that, but they fall back on old patterns and end up doing that in conversations. And that just happens so many times to me that I'm like, let me just preface it with this. I don't think it's bad to have a worldview that's framed by religion at all. I don't think that it's bad to have a morality structure that's framed all or exclusively or in majority by a religious text or religious ideas, because a lot of those things overlap with just basic human morals. Like, I don't need some tablet from God to tell me not to murder people. I just don't want to murder people. It's just part of it's all the same thing. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like they don't see it as a bigger thing. They put themselves on a pedestal and put their worldview above everybody else, when really it's just all the same freaking worldview.
The last question I had for you, you almost just answered it with what you just said, which is what's the solution? In parentheses, I put, we don't have one. But I think that talking is the thing. At the very least, talking is the thing. It starts opening up possibilities.
100%. Because I think for so long, like we'll start in 2016 to like 2022 or 2023 or whatever. Those dates are rough. Like at those points, we got so polarized in terms of conservatives and progressives in what we believe on social issues and this culture war that was being created. And it was so easy to just like fall into your tribe whenever an issue would come up, so that if somebody came out with like a man's issue that was like, okay, here's an example of a man being toxic, and the right would fall into the side where they'd start protecting people who had done very weird and bad behavior. Like we had to take a maximalist stance and say, no, the other side is completely also not right. So like we would split, and couldn't be a conversation. It was just defending our points of view, like we were being attacked. And so there was no conversation that could happen anywhere in the middle. It's all pushed very polar. And so this is kind of our attempt to be like, okay, what's real and what's not real? Like what's true and what's not true? Like Donald Trump has caused it so that we feel like we have to retreat into our camps and like freaking just not even be able to talk to each other. So nobody's trying. So here's two random dudes who are trying. Like this is our attempt.